Outlaw Final Words. Shocking last words of the Old West. Which outlaw joked about dinner in Hades with his final words? And which one coldly recorded his tally as his parting shot? We'll answer that later and present many more shocking last words backed by historical records, statistics, and geographical insights. Billy the Kid, born Henry McCarty, 1859 to 1881, is traditionally credited with 21 confrontations, though some contemporary estimates range between 18 and 25. His exploits occurred during the Lincoln County War in New Mexico, a conflict that, according to county records, claimed over 100 lives in some rural areas. New Mexico's harsh deserts and rugged mountains provided both a refuge and a battleground for outlaws and lawmen alike. Just hours before Pat Garrett fatally injured him near Fort Sumner on July 14, 1881, eyewitness accounts and newspaper reports from local papers, such as the Santa Fe Daily New Mexican document, that he declared, "I'm not afraid to die like a man fighting, but I would not like to be killed like a dog unarmed." This statement, preserved in numerous first-hand accounts, gives us a window into the volatile mix of courage and desperation that characterized life on a New Mexico frontier where distances were vast and justice often fell to the fastest draw. Thomas Blackjack Ketchum operated primarily in the rugged terrains of the Southwest during the late 1870s. The arid landscapes stretching from Arizona to Texas were notorious for lawlessness, where mining towns and railroad stops dotted the barren expanses. Historical hospital record from these communities indicate that during a notorious train robbery, Ketchum sustained injuries so severe that his arm had to be amputated, a grim statistic in an era when medical treatment was rudimentary and infections were common causes of death. Facing execution by suspension in the early 1880s, trial transcripts in regional newspapers record his final words. "Can't you hurry this up a bit? I hear they eat dinner in Hades at 12 sharp, and I don't aim to be late." These documents not only capture his dark humor, but also provide insight into the public nature of capital punishment in remote frontier towns, where executions were intended both as spectacle and deterrent. Sam Bass, whose criminal career spanned stagecoach and train robberies across Texas and the Southwest in the 1870s, is noted in criminal archives for his participation in over a dozen high-profile robberies. The vast, open plains of Texas and the shifting borders between U.S. states created an environment ripe for such acts, where distances allowed outlaws to elude law enforcement temporarily. Local sheriff reports and eyewitness accounts describe a bank heist marred by internal betrayal, a not uncommon occurrence in outlaw gangs operating in these volatile border regions. Official documents from that period record his last words as, "Let me go. The world is bobbing around me." These records also reveal that betrayal rates among outlaw groups could be as high as 30%, a figure that underscores the precarious nature of loyalty in the criminal underworld. Augustine Chacon's notorious career in the 1880s is supported by county records that attribute 30 confirmed fatal incidents to his actions. Operating in regions where jurisdiction often overlapped, such as the border areas of Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona, Chacon's life was intertwined with the complex politics of regional rivalries. Following a betrayal by an associate, as documented in court record from a regional courthouse, he was sentenced to a suspension-style execution. Execution logs and trial transcripts record his calm declaration on the execution platform. "Too late now. Time for the suspension-style execution. Adios todos, amigos." Such records not only detail his final words, but also offer curious insights into the methods of public execution, which were held in town squares and at county seats to serve as stark reminders of the consequences of criminal behavior. Tom Horn's varied career as an outlaw, scout, lawman, and hired gun is well documented in several state archives from Texas and Oklahoma. These regions, defined by their contentious disputes over land and water rights, were hotbeds for violence and retribution. Official law enforcement files detail his participation in numerous conflicts and note that he achieved approximately 17 confirmed neutralizations. His final words, "Neutralizing people is my specialty. I look at it as a business proposition. I think I have a corner on the market where rented and detailed newspaper articles that also describe the lengthy trial process and the structured judicial system, attempting to impose order on the lawless frontier. Such articles often included maps and statistical data on crime rates, highlighting the rapid expansion of towns and the corresponding rise in territorial disputes. Wild Bill Longley, born in 1851, is one of the better documented figures of early frontier violence. Records from county sheriffs indicate that his criminal career began after the accidental demise of his father's slave, a detail that appears in several contemporaneous legal documents from southern counties. His actions were heavily influenced by the intense regional rivalries that characterized the Deep South, where personal vendettas often escalated into cycles of violence. His capture and subsequent trial were recorded in detail in local archives, and execution records confirm his final confession: "I deserve this fate. It is a debt I owe for my wild, reckless life. When it is paid, it will be all over. May God forgive me." Such documents provide concrete data on the mortality rates and legal practices of the period, as well as information on the socioeconomic conditions that drove many young men into lives of crime. James Brown Miller, known as Deacon Jim, led a dual life that is meticulously recorded in both criminal reports and church registers. Official execution summaries from the 1880s attribute 51 fatal incidents to him, a statistic that appears in law enforcement archives across several states. Newspapers, including the Oklahoma City Times, documented his public suspension-style execution and his final words: "Let the record show I've neutralized 51 people." Little Rip. This figure is frequently cited in historical analyses and serves as one of the most reliable statistics on the violence perpetrated by outlaws during this era. Henry Starr, a descendant of the infamous Bell Starr, became a prominent bank robber during the economically volatile 1880s. Regional criminal archives note that after a brief period on parole, a common practice due to overcrowded prisons, he repeatedly returned to a life of crime. His activities, often set against the backdrop of Oklahoma's rapidly developing oil fields and booming railroads, were marked by intense rivalries between outlaw gangs and local law enforcement. Fatally injured during a robbery in Oklahoma, eyewitness accounts and newspaper articles record his final exclamation: "I love it. It is wild with adventure." These accounts also provide geographical context, describing how the sprawling landscapes and shifting borders contributed to the ongoing conflicts. Calamity Jane, born Martha Jane Canary, 1852 to 1903, is well documented in both medical records and civic archives from Deadwood, South Dakota. Beyond her reputation as an outlaw, local accounts detail her involvement in nursing smallpox victims during several epidemics, a contribution recorded in public health documents from the time. Her final words, "Leave me alone and let me go to hell on my own route," are preserved in multiple eyewitness testimonies and have been referenced in numerous studies examining the roles of women in frontier society. These studies often include maps of Deadwood and demographic data that illustrate the challenges faced by its inhabitants. Levi Boon Helm, known as the Kentucky Renegade, is among the most notorious criminals of the late 19th century. Law enforcement reports from Kentucky, along with subsequent records from neighboring states, detail his escape from an asylum and his spree of fatal incidents and acts of extreme violence. His public suspension-style execution was extensively covered by local authorities, and official execution reports note his final words: "Kick away, old fellow. My turn next. I'll be in hell with you in a minute." These reports often include statistical data on his crimes, with some records listing over 20 confirmed fatal incidents, contributing to the grim legacy he left behind. Tom O. Folliard, an orphan drawn to the legend of Billy the Kid, joined the Regulators during the Lincoln County War, a conflict that is documented in numerous historical texts and county records from New Mexico and Arizona. His participation in key battles is confirmed by eyewitness testimonies and official military and civilian reports from the turbulent period. During a desperate escape from a pursuing posse in the rugged terrain of the high desert, he was fatally injured. Witness accounts collected in the immediate aftermath record his last words: "Oh my God, Is it possible I must die? The sooner the better. I'll be out of pain. These testimonies also provide geographical insights, describing the difficult landscape that played a crucial role in the outcome of the conflict. Crawford Goldsby, better known as Cherokee Bill, began his criminal career as a young man operating in the Midwest. His involvement in a series of bank and train robberies is well documented in regional law enforcement files that span several states. His capture, following a betrayal during a solo train heist, a fate met by many outlaws in areas with shifting jurisdictional boundaries, was recorded in both newspaper accounts and official execution reports. His final words, "I came here to die," not to make a speech, offer a concise record of his end, and are frequently cited in historical analyses of frontier justice. Maps from the period show the routes of railroads and the locations of bank robberies, providing additional context to his criminal activities.